Our next speaker is Sri Ramesh Venkatraman. Sri Ramesh Venkatraman presently works as Director, Vivekananda Institute for Leadership Development, WeLead, Mysuru. Additionally, he is in Logical University, Hubli, and an honorary member on the Joint Board of Studies of the Vidyavardhaka College of Engineering. He has worked and held leadership positions across a cross-section of business and strategic consulting, knowledge process outsourcing, and training and capacity building, spanning the domains of sales, marketing, branding, product management, project management, training, business project management, and creative and structured writing. He has worked across geography, including India, US, and parts of Europe. Besides his area of core competence, Ramesh ji is also deeply invested in understanding, practicing, and disseminating the dharmic and cultural heritage of India. Writing is a passion, and he has authored several articles on a range of topics, including culture, spirituality, and politics. Today, Ramesh ji will be speaking on Vishnu Sahasranama, a window into the landscape of Dharma.
ఎందరో మహానుభావులు అంతరికి వందములు. When Tyagaraja said this, he used two words, Mahat and Anubhavam. So what you get from this is that in order to be a Mahanubhava, one, you must have the Anubhavam, the essence and the presence of that Mahat. So a Mahanubhava, to become a Mahanubhava, you have to have that Anubhavam of the Mahat, the supreme essence that is everywhere. You can see it as, but that is critical. Over the last 2 days, I think most of us have had that Anubhavam. At least I have had it. And I must thank Anupama Garu for arranging this. I'm still wondering why, what I'm going to be saying right now. So Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Chandrasekharendra Saraswatim Madhacharyaya Namo Namaha, Kalyana Venkataramanaya Namaha. Can I have that image? If I'm blocking it, there is an image. Okay, this is Amma and Appa. Am I blocking this one, or people can see it? Yeah, okay. Appa passed away last year, and Amma last Ekadashi. Tomorrow is Ekadashi. So, and one of the things that, and today is Dashami, and today is Mrigashirasha, my nakshatra. So, you think all of this is coincidence? I at least don't think it is. One of the things that happened is that my father wasn't a person who was very religious. He did not follow any, but about, say, 20 years ago, 20 years before he actually passed away last year, somebody handed him over the Vishnu Sahasranama. And I don't know what happened. He seemed to start to engage with it. And there was never a day when he did not chant it. And there was never a day when, towards the last 3 years of his life, he seemed to descend into a kind of silence that we could not bring him out of. His lips used to move, but he stopped engaging with us as well. I now realize why. And, when Amma passed away last Ekadashi, on Dashami I knew she would go. The previous day I knew she would go. And on Ekadashi, M.S. Subbalakshmi also was very tired. She had been singing on loop for her. She was continuously singing the Vishnu Sahasranamam, and roughly about 1 p.m. She said, and I said, and MS is saying, Kimekam daivate lokam kimva pyekam parayanam stuvantakam kamarchanta prapnuyurmanava shubham. And my mother closed her eyes, because she knew the answer that would come after that. And that is how you engage with the text. Nitin spoke about engaging, and you need to engage. And for close to 18, 19 years, she probably had engaged, and therefore she did not want to, listen to the answers anymore. And because she knew what would come after that. There is a need for each one of us to engage very closely with the text. And this is day number 639 for me, 739, I'm sorry, of having engaged with the Vishnu Sahasranama. About, can I have the next one, please? Yeah. This is my father. I said one of the things he started to do was this Likita Chapa. He started writing and he kept writing. He never stopped. Kind of always wrote. And he used to write on these one-sided paper. I used to give him all papers that I had. My students used to write an exam or write something, and he said, give me the paper with holes punched in them or anything, and he would start writing. So this is in Tamil Sri Ramajayam, and he kept writing. Towards the end, all he wanted was a ruler, a pencil, and a little pen, and he used to write in this kind of this extremely small, tiny handwriting of Sri Ramajayam that he used to write. And he kept writing. So I probably have about 5,000 to about 7,000 pages of this at home right now, of what he has written. And I often wonder what I should do with it. But one of them is this. And as you go through the pages, you will see that his handwriting goes from being very good to about, slowly, you know that he's also moving away, passing away. And then, the beautiful handwriting becomes a little less beautiful. But it doesn't change the meaning of what he was doing. So why am I saying all this? So in that sense, if there is one inheritance that has come to me, if there is something that has come to me, it is only this. Primarily this. It's the Vishnu Sahasranama. And therefore I started. So if people were to ask why I am speaking on the Vishnu Sahasranama, then this is one of the reasons. And then another reason is, the next one is, obviously, this man also happened to me. And he's the Paramacharya of Kanchi. And, he happened as in, one of the things, there's a very interesting story that is connected to Vishnu Sahasranama and Mahadeva and the Paramacharya. One of the things he used to do is before a Rudrabhishekam, he used to say, let's chant the Vishnu Sahasranama. Earlier, the matam used to be in Kalavai, not in Kanchipuram. They used to walk from Kalavai to Kanchipuram sometimes. And late into the night when, people used to be scared, those who used to walk with him. And he used to say, and they were hoping, they'll be walking from morning to night, and he would say, so he'll say, they're hoping that he'll ask them to, let's sit down for some time or something, in some place where they can take a rest. And he would say, chant the Vishnu Sahasranama and start walking. And before every Rudrabhishekam, he used to also chant the Vishnu Sahasranama. So what is this connection? Where is this connection? Why is he chanting Vishnu? Why is he asking people to chant Vishnu Sahasranama? Then one day, this is a little episode that comes up in the Daivat in Kural. And he says, the reason is very simple. All of these, the Pandavas are there, and Bhishma is expounding on the Vishnu Sahasranama, and all of them are so engrossed in it. He's finished. And here is somebody, who's lost every drop of his blood, and almost, he's almost sucked dry of every last drop of his blood. You can't. And then Yudhisthira asked, did somebody take notes? Kind of, take notes of what he said, and none of them has. In fact, Krishna himself is so engrossed listening to himself that he's forgotten to take notes. So they don't know what to do. And then Krishna says, the only person who's wearing a Shuddha Spatikamala is Sahadeva. So ask him to, and Mahadeva is Shuddha Spatika Sankasham. So ask him to, sit down with a Spatikamala and start praying to Mahadeva, Shiva, and perhaps you will get it back. So Krishna in his usual style says that, and Sahadeva sits down, starts praying to Shiva, and Shiva does come. And Sahadeva gets the gift of recalling every single word in the garland of 1,000 verses. And he says it in the same order that Bhishma chanted it, and Vyasa notes it down. And therefore the Vishnu Sahasranamam is chanted before Rudrabhishekam as well. And so this is one of those, I'll probably go to one other slide, the next one, and then Okay, this is, Ram yesterday spoke about how Shiva is Abhisheka Priya and Vishnu is Alankara Priya. Now, this is Kalyana Venkataraman. My name Venkataraman actually comes from here. This is a Swayambhu and is also a Hridaya Guha. In the sense that, when you enter the temple, you actually enter into a hillock. It's in a place called Tantondri. Tantondri Malai. Tantondri, that is, he thought, and therefore he manifested. And he's a Swayambhu, about 13.5 feet, with Lakshmi on his, he wears Lakshmi on himself. And he's also inside a little depression inside the hillock, and therefore he's also the Antaryami there. So he's both a Swayambhu as well as an Antaryami. So when I wrote the name Swayambhu, I actually used this picture, because he's a Swayambhu, he's also an Antaryami. And therefore this Kalyana Venkataramana, like I said, our name comes from here, and he's also, somebody who is engaged with me in all of these 730, or rather put up with me for 739 days, and hopefully for some more time. And so we'll look at what are the other things that we'll probably look at in the Vishnu Sahasranama. One of the things I also wanted to talk about is, why is Bhishma the conduit for the Vishnu Sahasranama? Very often people say that, Bhishma chanted the Vishnu Sahasranama and all of that. But I have a slightly different take on this, because I don't think it is... So, when he speaks, because one of the arguments that I made in a little post that I wrote, and I also mentioned in this one, I'll go to that before I come to the rather dry subject of what the Vishnu Sahasranama is in terms of number of namas, number of all of that. I found this in Parashara Bhattar's commentary. Parashara Bhattar has written it is called Bhagavad Guna Darpana. He talks about the gunas of Narayana. Because for him, it is the Saushilyam and the Sulabhatvam of Narayana that is critical. That is very important for him, Whereas Shankara will focus on the Ishatvam and the Paratatvam of Narayana. But all commentaries are good. You have Satyasanta Tirtharu in the Madhava tradition, who has also written a fairly elaborate commentary, with Bandanje Govindacharya writing probably one of the greatest Kannada commentaries that I've read. And you also have several other commentaries, Chinmayananda, the Ramakrishna Mutt, and all of them have written commentaries. Why should another person write? So I'm not writing a commentary on the Vishnu Sahasranama. Mine is a reflective meditation on it. So one of the things that I said that I would do, and which I've hopefully done well, is to take one nama and sit down with it and see what happens when I this one. So that is why this paper, this talk is also called Vishnu Sahasranama is a window into the landscape of Dharma. So as I see it, as I see the Vishnu Sahasranama unfold, you can take a nama, sit down with it, and see what happens. The nama can tell you many things. For example, it could be Amara Prabhu, or it could be Vishwam, it could be Vishnu, it could be Vashatkaraha, it could be any of these names. But what will the nama do to you? Frankly, ask yourself, how does it matter to you what Shankara thought of that name? What does it matter to you what Parashara Bhattar thought of it? What does it mean to you? Does it mean anything to you at all? How do you engage with the nama? So that is the question that came to me, and therefore that is the question that I've engaged with over several days, over the last course of these several days. It should mean something to me, right? What is the point? I also teach, like when they introduced me, I also teach development economics and management theory. So one of the things I always ask is, many of these students, when they write papers, they'll come up with, say, Kotler said that, or Stephen Covey said that, he said that, they said that, and Abdul Kalam said this. And I said, what does it mean to you? How does it matter to you what Abdul Kalam said? Does it matter to you at all? I mean, it should make sense to you as an individual. How do you connect with it? So that is the pursuit, that is the journey that I've been on. Now let's look at why Bhishma becomes the conduit for the Vishnu Sahasranama. And you'll bear with me because I take a slightly different note on this. Now when you read Parashara Bhattar's commentary, there's an interesting story that comes up. Yudhisthira is in conversation with Krishna. They're talking and suddenly Krishna becomes a little distracted. He's So he becomes distracted. Yudhisthira says, what's happening? And he says, I think Bhishma, the time for Bhishma to go has come. And if this great old man passes away, a lot of dharma will be lost. And therefore, I think it's time for us to go to that place where he is and then listen to him. And he also says something very interesting. He says, I am one with him. We are both one now. And he says, he now sees the truth like a fruit in the palm of the hand. Bhishma, Krishna is saying this of Bhishma. So when they get to the battlefield where Bhishma is there, shot through with all his arrows and lying on his bed of arrows, and he looks at Krishna and says, Krishna, I see the truth like the fruit in the palm of my hand. And Krishna says, I am one with you, and therefore now you shall speak of that which shall have the essence of the Vedas and shall go down and shall live for posterity as the word of the Vedas, Krishna says. Here at this moment, there is a transfer of adhikara from Krishna to Bhishma. So when Bhishma speaks, it is actually Krishna speaking of the Vishnu Sahasranama. So when people say that why is the Sahasranama always, when you say Sahasranama, why is it always synonymous with the Vishnu Sahasranama? It's because Krishna is speaking. And he's speaking after the war. And therefore, if the Gita is Tattvam, Vishnu Sahasranama is Tattva Darshanam. And Bhishma was given the adhikara of being the Tattva Darshi because he saw and he spoke. And what he spoke, and for that entire duration of the transmission, it was Krishna who spoke through the medium of Bhishma. Because, for example, one of the ways in which, looking at the character of Bhishma, and I know that I'm taking a completely different stand, because if we were to take an objective look at Bhishma's character and characterization and use the events in his life as an allegory and a means to deliver lessons on Dharma, we would see that Bhishma is symbolic of the superego. An ego that is so taken in by its own image of itself that it sees nothing but its own virtues. When it stares at its own reflection, all it sees is its own projection of itself minus the what's. Why would Devavrata make that pratigna? The oath which gave him his name and that made him into Bhishma, he was a master of Rajadharma, wasn't he? And Rajadharma demanded that he take his rightful place as the next king of Hastinapura. I think Shantanu and his desire for Satyavati was only an excuse. The larger, more critical reason was to massage his own ego. That he would make this giant sacrifice that would immortalize him across time. Even in his previous life as one of the 8 Vasus, he was the chief protagonist due of the ill-fated attempt to capture Vasishta's cow Nandini and all of that. Right? That too, his ego got the better of him. And the curse was particularly harsh on him. A long and, typically largely painful existence on earth. And you see how his ego manifests in the episode with Amba, Ambika, Ambalika, or the choice of his dress, Shvetavira. Vyasa says, the one person you can make out in the hustle and bustle of battle is Bhishma because he's dressed in white. Even his armor is white, all shining and all of that. His refusal to fight Shikandi, even if it meant the destruction of the armies of Duryodhana. All manifestations, I say, of an ego that was so caught up in itself. And when, Krishna takes up the Ratham, the chakra of the Ratham, he actually steps forward because the ego demands that great death at the hands of the Kshetrajna. But Krishna doesn't give him that. Till every last drop of his blood, the ego is sapped out, shot through with multiple arrows. Till he's lying in his own pool of blood. And then Krishna says, now there is nothing left. You see everything. You see the truth like the fruit in the palm of your hand. And therefore you now have the adhikara to speak on the Vishnu Sahasranama. And so when he takes up the chakram, he does not take, so as I see it, when the chakram is held in the vertical plane, it is the dharma chakram. in the horizontal plane it's the chakra that offers moksha. And so, which is why, I say that when Bhishma speaks, it is, and that is when he says that I am one with you, and therefore so many years of struggle, he realizes that Bhishma has finally found the truth. He's found what he actually needed to find much later. Now, the next theme that I want to explore is what are the different types of manifestations of the Narayana, the categories of the 1,000 namas. Broadly, you could put it into 7 categories or 8 categories probably. And you could, these 1,000 names would fall into one of these 7 categories. The first is Brahman, the Paratattva, the very essence of all essences, the screen on which everything is happening. That's Brahman, right? Ekam, the one without a second, beyond names, forms, gunas, and everything else. A lot of namas that talk of Brahman. The first one itself, Vishwam, Vishnu, Vishwam, Vashatkara, Bhutabhavya, Bhavat Prabhu, Bhutakrit, Bhutabhrat, all of those things are, in a sense, the all-pervading, omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent being. Experience as Sachidananda, Narayana as Brahman, is that he who reveals himself to himself. That is the Brahman. The second category of names you will see is as the Jagatkaraka Ishvara. In the primal state, he is embedded and dissolved in the Brahman, in the Paratattva. Then animated by Maya, that Brahman, that same Paratattva projects itself as the world of forms, names and gunas. It's also the triune of Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Again seen through the Pancharatra Agama is the 5 forms of Paravasudeva. With the Ananta Kalyana Gunas, all the Ananta, like we saw Kalyana Venkataraman. The Kalyana is not because he's ready to get married. He has all the Kalyana Gunas in him. So, therefore, and so Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, the cosmic forms of, representing the cosmic forms of consciousness, intellect, mind, ego, and with the Paravasudeva, dimensionally beyond that. If we see it as the Panchakritya, we have Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Maheshwara, that is Ishvara and Sadashiva, responsible for the 5 functions of Srishti, Sthiti, Laya, Tirodhana, that is the veiling of the true nature of our own selves, and finally the Anugraha, the unveiling. Even realizing your own truth is the unveiling is itself Anugraha, right? So all of these, so the names will run through all of these things, names that will say he's this, he's that. Paravasudeva, Parameshwara, and even Parashakti is there. Even those names would come. Third category is Jagat Niyamakaraka Ishwara. Many of these, many of the Devas, Devatas, a very interesting name. One of the names, forget which name, I'm bad with these names. So, one of the names talks of him as Shanmuka's assistant in war. So he even comes to that level. So the Devas, the Dikpalakas, all of them are him. That's what the Namas say. Then he's the Atma and the Atma Swarupa. The Brahman, that is the cause of all that we see in the world, has entered into it. That is why he is Vishnu. All pervading, invading, and all of that, enveloping us within and without and all of that, dwells within each being as the Atman, veiled by its own Maya and clothed by the Sharira. You will find names that mention this. And this is the meaning of the name Vishnu. He who envelops, pervades everything and has also invaded, interpenetrated and entered everything and into all beings, within and both without. And the 5th category is Karma Phaladata. Now, he who decides, so they give him this one, he who decides, determines and hands over to each the fruits of their actions, the Karma Phaladata. Some names would fall under that category. The 6th is the Antaryami, the indwelling seer. The eternal Sakshi, the silent observer and witness dwelling within, the conscious keeper who shows the path of Dharma. We keep ignoring that little thing, that keeps telling you. The more active that becomes, the better you become, kind of so. And the final one which you actually relate to is the Dina Vatsala. Give me something. So the Dina Vatsala who gives you the material thing. So that's one. So while the Vishnu Sahasranama, Rajarshi was mentioning yesterday that it's a great, this one for the Laukika, for living, and all of us want to live in this world. Before we move on to that, if you actually do the sadhana of the Vishnu Sahasranama, it's also possible to go beyond it. while you will get everything that you want right here, everything that you deserve rather, not everything that you want, and not everything that you desire. So perhaps everything that you deserve you will probably get. And if you don't get that also, is, you don't deserve it kind of. So, and therefore the Dinavatsa. And over the course of these 1,000 names, you'll find each of, many of these categories. Now, why am I calling it as like I said, the window into the landscape of Sanatana Dharma? So in traversing through the namas, you will find that, not only these categories, you will also find that through the nama and what it conveys in terms of the Supreme Being. I mean, you can call it whatever, but for the Vishnu Sahasranama is personified as Vishnu, reclining on the great serpent of interminable coils. Adisesha represents eternal time, right? I mean, Adisesha is eternal time. And Vishnu, in reclining on Adisesha, sends out that message, I am beyond time. I have transcended Kala. I mean, Adisesha is below him, right? So, and he has even transcended samsara. And for those like me who are overwhelmed by the vastness of the ocean of Sanatana Dharma, the Vishnu Sahasranama offers an opportunity to take a step ladder approach. This happens when one takes up one nama and sits with it, contemplates on it, meditates upon it, and then follows the thread of where it leads. Then the possibilities open up. The thread might lead you to multiple nodes of that intricate web of Dharma. There is this web of Dharma, you can pick, choose, and you can crawl around and do what you want, this one. Much like the World Wide Web, there is the Indra's net is also as vast and all of that. And what you also see is as the Dinavatsala, you build a bond with the Archa Murti. There is a Murti that you make, through the mantra also there is a Murti. For example, how I relate to Vishnu is altered. It's not Durdarshan Vishnu that I relate to. I don't relate to him or this one. My Vishnu is only my Vishnu. You cannot see what I am seeing, how I see him. You will see him as you see him. And when I chant his namas, there is a Vishnu who I actually relate to. He's mine. He's no one else's. And for each one of us, there is one like that. And from that Archa Murti, the Murti that you're actually using to pray, to worship, you can do Archana of a physical Murti or Archana even within, you move to the Antaryami. What I have realized is that from that Murti form, you actually move into the Antaryami because the voice of the Antaryami starts to resonate a little more clearly. And then all the other categories and other things, we will slowly move along in the path that leads up to this. Now, the third theme that I have written in the paper, and I've started to follow the paper because there were those who also complained that I didn't start with it. So, no. Observation. No, I meant an observation. I used the wrong choice of words. So, okay, so Yudhisthira, poses 6 questions. Each one of them, and that is how the Vishnu Sahasranama begins. Although, it begins with much earlier with all the Dhyana shlokas, the mantras, and if you actually want to do sadhana of the Vishnu Sahasranama, you also will have to learn how to do the nyasa and the karanyasa and all of those things. That is when you do it, and it's not enough to do it, say, chant it once a day and all that. There are several times that you must have to do it, and it must become a part of you when you start to engage with it and all that. The first question he asks is Yudhisthira uvacha kimekam daivatam loke kim vapyekam parayanam stuvantakam kamarchanta prapniyur manavashubam. And then he says kodharma sarva dharmanam bhavata paramo matah kim japan muchyate jantur janma samsara bandhanat. So he says very interesting why he is asking all these questions. Before that he says Yudhisthira has asked all the questions that he wanted to ask earlier in the Shanti Parva. This, in the Anushasana Parva, he is coming back again with a multitude of questions on things that he's, because he's still depressed. And so, the first question, if you break this up, the first question is, Kimekam Daivatam Loke. The second question is, Kim Vapyekam Parayanam. The third is, Tuvantakam. Fourth is, Kamarchanta Prapnuyur Manavashubham. Fifth is ko dharma sarva dharmanam bhavata paramomataha. Sixth is kim japan muchyate jantur janma samsara bandhana. These are 6 questions. So the first question, kimekam daivatam loke, he says, who is it according to you? Now it's Krishna who's entered into Bhishma, right? So it's Bhishma, the answer is coming from Krishna himself. Who can be considered the one supreme being of the world, of the universe? Kimekam daivam. That's the first question. And the loke can be seen as multiple things, not just the multiverse. It is also all sources of knowledge, vidyas, the shastras and all of that. In your examination of the shastras, the vidyas, the Vedas, Vedanta, the universe, who do you think is that one? Kim ekam. Second question is kim vapi ekam parayanam. Who is that one being who is the ultimate goal and destination? So questions 1 and 2 deal with the upeya, the final destination. Whom should I worship? Where should I reach? Those are 2 questions. He starts with, so Yudhisthira also begins with the end in mind. He says, where do I get to? There is something that I need to get to. Question 3 is Tvantakam. Chanting the names of which divine personality, who among the devas, deities, whom should I chant? Whose names should I chant? And then he says, Kamarchanta prapnu your manava shubham. Not just chanting, that if I use this, I must find archantaha. Archantaha is to actually do archana and worship. Prapniyur, get. Manava, shubham, auspiciousness. And could also mean the fruit of liberation. That. Fifth is ko dharma sarva dharmanam, which according to is the greatest of dharmas. That is capable of bestowing the greatest benefits. And the sixth is kim japan muchyate jantur janma samsara. What is that which one must chant in order to break free from the bonds of samsara? Now look at how Bhishma answers these. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The answers come in the order of 6, 4, 3, 5, 2, 1. He also begins with the end in mind, but what he says is that the ends are not cut off from the means, because the means represents the idea in the making. And therefore he answers the means first. Now some people were asking the question, we can just be, why do we need to have rituals? Why do we need to practice? Why should we do all this? Actually, Bhishma answers this very question. While Yudhisthira begins with the end in mind, he says, how do I get there? He says, no, it's not about getting there. It's about what you will do now. Start. So when we ask those questions, I think the first question is to ask ourselves, what are we doing? Are we even practicing anything? We want our children to do, I will not do anything, but my children have to become dharmic and all that. They won't if you don't do. If we don't practice, how do you expect our children to do any practice or to do anything at all? They won't do. They do what you do, and there is this, the rare possibilities, of course, the outliers are definitely possible, but the outliers are rare. Because the means represent the seed and the end represents the tree. So you start with the means. And who do you think would have, the words that I've used now, who do you think would have quoted this? This is Martin Luther King actually. About means and ends. He talks about means and ends. So the answers come in 6, 4, 3, 5, 2, 1. How much time do I have? 4 minutes, sir. Not even started, I suppose. Okay, so Bhishma's answers are, so I'll go to the answers straight then. So he says, Tabeva charchaya nityam. No, that is he says, Jagat Prabhum Deva Devam, Anantam Purushottamam, Stuvan Nama Sahasrena, Purushas Tatatotitaha. The one master of the Jagat Prabhum, one master of the universe, Deva Devam, the master of all the gods as well, including Brahma for that matter, who is limitless and, who is the limitless expanse. And yesterday, I think Ram spoke about that. He said Shiva becomes Prithvi. That's very interesting. Many of us do the Panchayatana Puja. It's one of those rare pujas where the Banalingam, which represents Shiva, is actually Prithvi Shattattva. And Swarna Rekha. And Swarna Rekha is got from Andhra, because we take it from the Swarnamukhi river. here in Andhra. So Swarna Rekha is that little stone that you use which has a rekha of gold. She is Swarna Rekha and she is worshipped as Swarna Rekha. She is Agni Tattva. And Shiva becomes Prithvi and Narayana becomes Akasha Tattva and Ganapati becomes Apa, water in that this one. And so like you were saying, so Shiva is Prithvi there as the Adhara, and even if I am, for example, I will do the Panchayatana with Narayana in the middle because he is not just my Ishta, he is my Kula Devata. But even then, he still remains Akasha. Because for Panchayatana, Shiva is Pradhana. I can place Narayana in the middle. So this is the Abheda between, Maheshwara and Narayana and all of that. So should I answer this or should I go to one of the names to say how I have actually reflected? Can I transgress a little? Yeah. Okay. So I'll quickly go. Jagat Prabhum Deva Devam Anantam Purushottamam. I think Stuvan Nama Sahasrena Purushas Tattotitaha. So that's he says. And then he says Tameva Charche Nityam Bhaktaya Purusham Avyayam. That Purusham who is Avyayam, beginningless, endless, indestructible and all that. Dhyayan Stuvan Namasyamsha Yajamanas Tamevacha. It's not like Dhyayan Stuvan. That's what when I reflect back, this is what my father and he was doing unconsciously, always Dhyayan. It's not something I take a book and say, this is today I'll chant Vishnu. No, he's constantly, he becomes the thrum of your life. The breath starts to, speak of him and nothing else. That's the kind of thing he's saying. So, because the establishment of the deity when you do Karanasa is here. You establish him in the Hridaya Guha and then you can't let him go. I mean, you continue to engage with him. It's like the Soham of the breath becomes him. So that's how it is done. And then he says, Anadi Nidanam Vishnum. Anadi Nidanam Vishnum Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Lokadhyaksham Stuvan Nityam Sarva Dukkhadi Gobhaved Brahmanyam Sarva Dharmagnam Lokanam Kirti Vardhanam Lokanatam Mahadbhutam Sarva Bhuta Bhavadbhavam. And then he says Brahmanyam and all that. So I'll quickly go through this because I think since I've run out of time. So. And then he, qualifies it, favors further saying he's Pavitranam Pavitram Yo Mangalanach Mangalam Devatam Devatanam Cha Lok Bhutanam Yo Avyayapita. And all of this. So let me take a couple of namas to see, how my thing is little different, nothing else but to show this one. For example, let's look at there is 297 is Kantaha. He's called Kantaha. And Shankara says, he who is exceedingly beautiful and attractive, he who has the power of Akarshana. And he says, extremely handsome and brilliant in appearance, whose form is enchanting and is the repository of infinite beauty and brilliance. That's Shankara. Parashara is very straightforward. He says he's Kantaha because of his beautiful and delectably enchanting form that charms all. He's referring to Mohini here. And further, Narayana is the personification of Shantam Shivam Sundaram. He who is the very personification of tranquility, he says, existing as the unmanifested infinite, unknowable and ultimate truth, handsome, beautiful, and the epitome of supreme opulence. This nama again occurs as nama number 660, but contextually it will be different. There is no, in each context the namas will be different. There are actually not 1000 unique namas. There are only 960. There are 960 sputa namas, and a few namas are repeated. So I'll come to that since it's there in the book, so you can read that. So how do you, for example, here is this one. For example, Parashara Bhattar says when Nammalvar used to talk of the Paratattvam, he used to speak fluently of Narayana's Paratattvam. But the moment he started talking about the guna, he would go into samadhi for 6 months. 6 months. That was how the Alvars, connected with Narayana. And therefore, sometimes, so that is why the emphasis on the Saushilyam and the Sulabhatvam. Is it Sulabham for us? No. But for Parashara Bhattar, it's Sulabham. Sulabhatvam, it's very easy to get to Narayana. But we know it's so difficult. But for them, because they've already reached that stage, he says, Saushilyam and Sulabhatvam of Narayana. Whereas Shankara consistently talks of the Paratattvam and the Ishittam, the Aishwaryam of, Shankara. How did I see this? So I will quote from what I wrote. It's available on my blog and probably will appear as a book. the star Rohini was in the ascendant, with all the other planets and stars aligned in beneficent positions. Peaceful silence reigned across the quarters of the entire universe. The stars seemed to shine brighter and sparkle like diamonds in the sky, and the rivers seemed to have slowed down and become even more graceful, if that was possible. Graceful in their meandering path to the ocean. Ponds and water bodies were full of brilliant lotuses, with their succulent and soft petals in full bloom. The woodlands and forests resonated with the chirping of the birds and the buzzing of the bees. They seemed to be talking to one another and saying, "He is coming." The wind that blew that night turned into a gentle breeze that went to each flower, picked up its scent, and dispersed that fragrance across the world. Yogis sitting in meditation saw a great peace descend into them, and a smile involuntarily caressed their face as they knew deep within, in the heart of their hearts, that he who lived within their heart caves was descending to earth. Divine and spontaneous music and the nada of pranava filled the air. Kinnaras, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Siddhas, men and women started to sing and hum, dance and whirl, caught up in the fervor of the moment. The Devas stood in readiness, their palms overflowing with beautiful flowers of various hues, and the Rishis nodded knowingly, for they knew that the Purna Avatara was coming to fulfill his promise. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyudyanam adharmasya tadatmanam sajamya paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. And in the middle of the night, when darkness reigned across the world, was born that Purnamsha of Vishnu, lotus-eyed and with the signs of Vishnu, the conch and the gada and the mark of Srivatsa, the brilliant lustrous Kaustuba already shining on his dark chest, piercing the darkness of that night, and across that beautiful form was the streak of Pitambara, curly locks like a rain-filled cloud with dainty tendrils playing on his forehead, the kundala dangling in his ears. Here was Hari come to redeem the world. So just reading one of the commentaries of how I've seen it, and you run out of time, right? 1 minute. Okay. So I think I'll read one more and then I'll end there. Okay, the 319 is Achyuta. He who is unchanging one, beyond the sad vikaras, the 6 changes, normal to all beings. This nama also appears as nama number 100. And now, Chuta means fallen or to fall. That is someone who wavers or is not steady. Achyuta is he who never falls or deviates from his true nature. And Narayana is the unchanging one who transcends all the sadvikaras. The 6 changes that starting from birth right up to death. So I'll straight away go to what I've written, and now how do we connect to it? In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna refers to Krishna as Achyuta on 2 instances, primarily 2 instances. The first one occurs in chapter 2, verse 21. The second in chapter 11, verses 41 and 42. And the usage of Achyuta here is contextual as well as relevant. And I think there are 40 names that are used across the Gita. And each name is contextual. There is a reason why Krishna is called a specific name, and he's never called Krishna. It's always Bhagavan Uvacha. There is no Krishna speaking or Krishna Uvacha nowhere in the... So in that verse 21 and 22, Arjuna says, please take my chariot to the... I'll skip the Sanskrit because it's one month. Arjuna says, please take my chariot to the middle of both armies. O peerless, unshakable, infallible one. That is Achyuta. He's called him Achyuta now. Place the chariot in the middle so that I may look at the warriors who are assembled here, arrayed for battle, whom I must fight in this epochal battle for Dharma. This is the moment when the Bhagavad Gita actually takes its crucial turn. When Arjuna loses the will to fight, he's become Chuta. And therefore he's referring to Krishna as Achyuta. And he needs to lean on him to get to that. That is why he needs that infallible one who has incarnated as his friend and who has voluntarily chosen to be the charioteer of his life. Arjuna is the Nara whose nature is to be fallible. And therefore it is that he has wisely chosen to hand over the reins of his life, as it were, at the moment of his greatest battle to that Narayana who is Achyuta, who never wavers. Also important to note is that he who never falls from his status decides to become the charioteer. Just look at the Saushilyam of that Narayana, that he who is sourced says, I'll descend and become your charioteer. So the idea is that when you actually start to engage with him, he's willing to come to any level, to come down. And so are we ready to hand over the reins is what we need to. And the second time is when he's called Achyuta, is because in the 11th chapter is the Vishwarupa Darshana. Arjuna is so overawed at what he has seen and at what has been revealed to him that he starts to beg Krishna. He says, forgiveness. He says, I didn't know who you were, Achyuta. I didn't know you were this person. I called you my friend. I called you, Yadava. I called you this. I called you that and all of that. And now I realize you are this Achyuta who's this great being that you are, and I never recognized that. So I'll stop here. So if you want to engage, maybe you could look up some of the names that I've written on. As I said, it's not a translation, it's a meditation on the Vishnu Sahasranama. Thank you.
For the time.